The Liberals, also being relatively instrumental in Canny, decided that they would install a new leader, coronate him, and now we have a prime minister who's only been selected by about 130,000 Canadians.
And Jeff Ballingall, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you just give everybody a little bit of some background info on you and exactly why it is you are such an important person to talk to today?
Sure. So I've worked in Canadian politics for going on, 15 years. I'm most known for starting Ontario Proud and Canada Proud. My firm, Mobilize Media, is under contract with both organizations. And then we also work with politicians and public affairs firms and stakeholder groups from across the country. So my team ran the digital for the Aaron O'Toole leadership campaign. And we were recently in the Doug Ford Conservative War Room here in Ontario doing some work. So we work primarily in politics. And that's kind of what I'm known for, but we do other stuff too. But yeah, that's kind of why I'm here today.
Well, one thing is, you're like the social media guy in every capacity. I think I have skills. I don't in comparison. And, I'm going to share a little anecdotal story here. One of my best friends, so she is usually she always describes herself as a liberal. I think she's just pretty normal. Like she's a pretty center-leaning person. We actually have many of the same views, but she was in town over the weekend. She doesn't live here anymore. And she called me afterwards and she said, Jasmine, what's wrong with everybody? Because I would consider myself to be a liberal, but it is so obvious right now that I'm voting conservative in this election. Without a doubt, that is so obvious. But what on earth is going on with social media? All of my friends are so hyped up about all this crazy stuff that's going on, and it just doesn't make any sense to me at all. And I told her, I'm like, I don't have an answer either. And so for you being somebody on the conservative side who's very well versed in social media, you're seeing everything that's going on across the spectrum there. What exactly do you think is going on with liberal social media influencers, things like that are pushing things and they're omitting certain details, and why are people doing that, and why the effect that it's having is just so extreme in this election, given that it's 2025, I guess. So your thoughts?
Sure. So I think young people, we know how they're voting. They're voting conservative overwhelmingly. I think that's obvious because, they can't afford a home, or they're worried about the future, or they can't, start a family. And they live on social media. They don't consume cable news. And I think boomers, on their other hand, they have this nostalgic belief in a Canada that I think no longer exists, that was safe, that, had opportunities for young people, that was fair. And nowadays, nowadays it's not true, but they kind of believe it to be true. They think it's true. And that's because a lot of boomers, a lot are on social media, but many aren't. And I think if you consume your news through the Globe and Mail and primarily cable news like CBC or CTV, I think their brains are rotting a bit, and they think that Mark Carney is some sort of savior, that Pierre Poilievre is evil, and what have you. And so I think we're going to see, and then they have more faith in things like polls, so they're more likely to answer them. So I think that is kind of what's going on with the election. Obviously, I have some more thoughts, but I think that's kind of the lay of the land, that where we stand right now.
It's kind of funny. You mentioned polls. So obviously you're familiar with do you trust the polls and all these things, and then the stop the steal buttons being placed by the Liberal Party, all that stuff. And I noticed something quite interesting in just the difference in response. So they had all this stuff with Pierre Poilievre. Do you trust the polls? He says, yes, without a doubt, I do. Obviously, it's ridiculous that you even have to ask me that. CBC has done how many stories about it? And then NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was actually just on breakfast television in Toronto, if I'm not mistaken. And he was asked, essentially, do you trust the polls? And he said no. And I'm like, yeah. Wow, okay, let's see how this turns out and spins.
If the election were held tomorrow, there is not a single public opinion poll, major public opinion poll, I should say, that I can find that doesn't show the Liberals making a political comeback at the expense of your New Democrats. Why have you failed to break through?
One of the things we notice is that I don't know if the polls are able to accurately capture our support, because just a couple months ago, the Ontario NDP had their election, and folks said that the leader wasn't going to win their seat and that we weren't going to make party status, but we won official opposition. So I think that's one challenge that our support is very harder to gauge. But I know that there's a debate coming up and there's a real opportunity to make the case to Canadians.
You're trying to pin this on the Conservatives for not trusting the polls, and here you have NDP outright saying, no, we're way higher than that one for sure.
Yeah, but it's different, right? When the NDP are skeptical, that it means it's because they're good people. When Conservatives are skeptical, it means that they're crypto fascists, aliens from another planet, right? Like that's how it works. Like it's the same thing that whether it's Justin Trudeau wearing blackface or Mark Carney, not paying taxes in Canada. These aren't faults of the Liberals. These are learning experiences for the rest of us. So it is what it is in Canadian politics. We can moan and we can complain about the rules being unfair, or we can and the system being tilted a bit, but or we can take the system that is, we can and figure out how to win the game with the rules that are in place and not necessarily with the rules that we want.
And with that, how do you feel as though the campaign and everything is going so far? There's been so much criticism, obviously, from opposition to it, people who don't want the Conservatives to win, like anything, they're just grabbing and trying to make such a big deal. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I guess no one likes a Monday morning quarterback. We don't know, and we don't also know the results. And so it's really hard to know. The election's either going to be won because a ton of people show up that aren't reflected in polls, like we saw in the United States and Brexit and other big change elections, or it's going to be decided by boomers and the collapse of the NDP, which will sink the Conservatives. So it's going to be one or two things, I think. Talk to me in 20 minutes and my gut will tell me something different. It's certainly nerve wracking. We've all got we all have a lot at stake in this election. I think this is the most important one of our lifetimes, but certainly. I think the Conservative campaign's doing very strongly, getting their message out, turning out oppo on opposition research on Liberal candidates. Pierre's certainly getting out there. He's doing interviews with, Blog TO and other, new media outlets. I think that's incredibly important. Podcasts. He's really softening his image, talking about, his daughter with autism. He's doing this sorts of new media that I think is really important. I would have liked to see them do more of this earlier, more of this, at the beginning of the year, even prior to the election, but they're doing it now, and that's what matters. And so hopefully that's going to have an effect. We also have the leaders' debates, the French one and the English one this week, and those are going to be big. You can always, the latest thing now is to say the leadership debates don't matter. But as a social media guy, I know that you can take, we can find those moments and make them big, right? So in the presidential election debate, we saw, Joe Biden had his senior moments. And those, even if you didn't watch the debates, you were going to see them blasted all over social media afterwards, from official Trump channels, from official, unofficial channels. Those were going to, from just media in general, whether it's Barstool Sports, whatever, people were going to see those clips. So it's going to matter. Pierre's going to have to bring his A game. So is Mark Carney, and we'll see. And we'll see who shakes out. And I hope too, with the Greens being omitted, that's going to help people give more time for guys like for Singh and for Carney. I think Singh needs to have a good debate. I think if he can position themselves as a reasonable alternative to Mark Carney, he can steal some left-wing votes from Carney. And I think more time with the Greens omitted hopefully has more time for Mark Carney to screw up.
Actually, it's kind of funny. I was watching CTV News this morning. I know I hate myself, but I actually like CTV for the most part. But they one of their segments that they were doing was about the debates, and it was talking about the different leaders. And somebody had said, I can't recall who, but they had said something to the effect of, well, this is going to be Mark Carney's opportunity to show just how calm and collect he is compared to Pierre Poilievre, who's going to be, he's going to be so divisive and and I'm like, man, like Pierre Poilievre is not, in my interpretation at least, not divisive at all. He's direct. He calls things out for what they are. And I feel like we actually need that. The entire world probably needs that. Like, let's stop sugarcoating things. Let's just tell it how it is and be honest.
Yeah, I think there's a balance, right? I think, and
Of
Pierre does
course.
a good job of that. Like, you want to make sure that you're friendly, you're approachable, that
Mhm.
you're building a big team, that people want to join your team. But you also have to call a spade at times. And I think frankly, in this country, we should have been more outraged over the last 10 years. It's certainly unrecognizable versus the Canada that I grew up in. I don't remember it being just this dangerous. I don't remember houses being unaffordable. I'm 39 and I was able to buy a house at 30 on a meager salary, and that's just not available to anyone these days. I mean, I wouldn't want to be 18-year-old a student right now. I wouldn't want to be a 25-year-old entering the job market. It's really, really, really unfair, and what's happened to this country for young people, and it frankly sickens me. And I have a son myself, and I'm worried about his future here. If people should have been calling this out a long time ago, there's a lot of things wrong with this country, and that we could use a bit more outrage at times.
I mean, listen, people were calling it out a few years ago, but they were called ists and phobes and extremists. So,
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, yeah. If you were a climate denier 6 months ago, if you were against the carbon tax, and now you're just a proud member of the Liberal Party, it's ridiculous.
what are you looking most forward to the debates tonight?
I just want Mark Carney to lose.
Okay, actually, on that note, I was thinking about this, and this is also kind of my thought process when they were talking about Pierre Poilievre. Oh, well, he's such a little spitfire. He's so divisive. And the only thing I could think was like, man, you know what? Pierre Poilievre may be direct at times, but Mark Carney is incredibly condescending. And like you can see it in his eyes when he hates to be somewhere, which is
He's not used to it, right? He's
Yeah.
never had to face scrums before. I think this is where a lot of Pierre's muscle memory is going to kick in. I mean, this guy's been a politician for a long time. He's been a leader for 2 years. He has that timing. He's gone around and done a million town halls, a million rallies. He knows what works with crowds. He knows how to make a media soundbite. He knows how to make a social media video. And Carney, for all his, you don't really get hard questions as a bank governor, and you certainly don't get, and he hasn't had that time and that on the job training that Pierre has. So that gives me a lot of room to be optimistic. But it's staggering to think of if a conservative leader wasn't paying taxes, was doing tax havens overseas, helping billionaires, had multiple passports, you name it. They would be vilified like Mitt Romney was in the 2012 U.S. election, and just treated like complete garbage and some corporate elite. But it's Mark Carney, so that means he's an expert, and it's totally fair game. So.
I miss the days when you could be Canadian and you could just be sane and you weren't so pro or anti a certain party that you could just say that there's things that are wrong, period. Like even for me, there's so many people who say, oh, well, what happens if Pierre wins? Then what are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm going to do the exact same stuff. I love the Conservative Party. I'm absolutely voting for them. I'm a huge fan of Pierre's, have been for many years. That's where my loyalty is. That's my bias up front. But I still have values and standards that I'm going to hold everybody to. I don't care if it's my party of choice, but like if they do something, and of course they're bound to do something I don't absolutely love. Welcome to life. I'm like, of course I'm still going to hold everybody to the same standards. Like that's our democratic right. We're supposed to do that. You shouldn't have a free pass just because you like somebody, and you shouldn't be extra cruel over nothing just because you don't like somebody.
Yeah, and Canada, frankly, we've been self-harming for years. We're taking crazy pills, and I just think it's not even close. Like some of the stuff that we've been doing for the past 10 years is just insane. Whether it's letting repeat violent criminals out on the streets.
And while Eric over here is opposed to having people on house arrest, we do have to acknowledge the fact that our prison system is incredibly costly. Housing somebody within the prison system is a huge burden on taxpayers versus having them on house arrest, for instance.
Pushing investment and jobs away, just being okay with blatant government corruption and cost overruns. We just pretend no, that's normal. Like, no, it's not. And
really
so, yeah, we should,
actually.
as Canadians, should be able to criticize the government. Under the Liberals, they were trying to bring in online censorship and a million other things to buy off the press. with our tax dollars. So that's the sort of stuff. I just want us to stop being crazy and self-harming our beautiful country and actually and start righting the ship. And I think we need a good press. We need citizens that are engaged. We need people. They need to be able to hold guys like Pierre Poilievre and others to account if they should be so lucky to form government. And that job doesn't end. I think good citizenship requires constant vigilance. And I know I'm butchering some quote there, but yeah, that's what it takes.
Yeah, Canada has a weird mentality where we tend to only really care about politics when we're near an election. And then other than that, we don't care at all. And it's like, oh, cool. Like, we should probably care year round about what's going on, right?
Yeah, and we've got to stop the spectacle that, just because America might be a dumpster fire at times, and we might, be entertained by their politics or disgusted or whatever it might be of the day. It doesn't give us a pass to think everything's fine and rosy in our own country. And I think for a lot of boomers, especially who have had their brains rotted on cable news, they think politics and they think of America and they neglect everything that's going on in their own backyard.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jeff Ballingall, thank you so much for joining us. How can people help you keep on doing what you're doing and to spread the message and all that stuff? What's the best thing for them to do?
Ooh, okay. Well, I'll give you myself 2 plugs. If you support Canada Proud, you want to do stuff with Canada Proud, check us out on Instagram, X, whatever, all the social media platforms. Give us a share, like us, follow our stuff. And if you want to work with us on social media and do good work, check out my company, Mobilize Media Group. We've got a team of 7 and we're growing and we're always looking for new clients and new staff.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
The Liberals, also being relatively instrumental in Canny, decided that they would install a new leader, coronate him, and now we have a prime minister who's only been selected by about 130,000 Canadians. And the real issue here is, Pierce, I think that older Canadians who are likely to prefer Carney believe that he's a return to the stability, let's say, of the period between, well, even the post-war period, but particularly between 1990 and 2010. Carney's a banker. Canadians think he's pro-free market. They think that he's pro-industry. They think that he's a genuine, old-style, stable, conservative liberal type. And he looks the part and he plays that, and that's how he puts himself forward. But the problem with that, sir, is that Carney is seriously bad news. Despite his international cachet and his lengthy CV and his term as Bank of England governor, that's all impressed Canadians and made them believe on the face of his CV that he's a competent person. But a little bit of investigation into what he believes and the scope of the oncoming disaster makes itself clear. I mean, Carney believes that 75% of the world's fossil fuels have to remain in the ground. He believes that every single financial decision that every individual makes and every company should prioritize decarbonization over every other consideration, right? He was UN climate envoy. And he started a consortium of businesses that agreed really to be under the aegis of central planning because he believes the climate apocalypse narrative. And my sense is that that entire narrative, and I mean entire, is nothing but the use of provocative and ill-founded fear to exercise a level of control over people that, well, we'll find unimaginable if it ever manages to manifest itself.